Marner and Matthews haven't exactly had showcase-type performances at the Four Nations. Yes, Marner had the OT winner against Sweden, but outside of that, he's been pretty quiet. So quiet, he was taken off McDavid's line and shuffled down the lineup. And Matthews doesn't have a single goal yet. Hayes, which Maple Leaf needs a big performance more in the final, Matthews or Marner?
I think it's Auston Matthews. I think it's definitively Auston Matthews because of what he represents to his team, right? Auston Matthews is the captain of that American team. As far as I'm concerned, the Tkachuk brothers have taken over the whole program, right? Austin's not a big personality. He's not overly, back and forth with the media. He's not overly gregarious with the media. The Tkachuk brothers love that off the ice, but they've also brought it on the ice where Austin has not had that signature moment yet. And this new era of American hockey with all these great young players, he is supposed to be at the forefront of it. And as great as Matthew Tkachuk is as a player, as great as Brady Tkachuk is, Auston Matthews is better. And Auston Matthews has got to be expected to have a big, big game, a signature moment in his career on American soil when now all these Americans are starting to jump on board this hockey program and they're looking at the leader, the captain, it's Auston Matthews. So when I look at Marner and I look at where he sits in or fits in with this Canadian team, I can give you 5, 7, 8 players that are more important to this team's success. Obviously, McDavid, Sid, McKinnon, McCarr, Binnington, and Net. I could probably give you 2 or 3 more, maybe more than that. It's not a slight at Marner. It's just a reality to where he fits in on the pecking order of the Canadian roster. Matthews is at the top of the American one. That's where he's supposed to be. He hasn't played to that level. Now he's a little bit banged up. We know his playoff history. This is a big, big game, a big, big moment for both players, both teams, both countries. But if I'm picking one who's got to have a bigger night, it's Auston Matthews.
Okay, but you're talking about the big scheme of things. What about as an individual? Auston Matthews is the Leafs captain. He's got term on his deal. He's fine. Marner, though, is a pending UFA, fighting to prove he deserves to be paid amongst the game's elite players. What, if anything, do you think this tournament has done to affect Marner's value as he looks for his new deal?
Well, it depends on how much the Leafs really value, big game moments and big game performances, right? Gino, like Mitch Marner's been in the league now for 8.5 years. He's been in the playoffs 8 times, and he is not defined as a playoff performer. Neither is Auston Matthews, right? Let's be fair here. But Mitch Marner doesn't have the rep of a guy that is throw my team on my back, I'm going to drag them to the promised land. So I'm not sure that's been something that the Maple Leafs have really prioritized in the past when it came to actually working on contracts. And I'm not sure it will change in the future, but it certainly can't hurt if he has a big game. At some point, it's got to happen. Marner's too good of a player. He's got to have a big moment. He's got to have a big game. And it's really going to pay off when it comes to the Maple Leafs and that contract negotiation in the playoffs. That's what the Leafs care about, right? Brad Treliving, Brendan Shanahan, they're Canadians. They'd love to see Mitch play great. They'd love to see Canada win. But they're going to be defining their team and determining what they do in the future based on how these guys play for the Maple Leafs. And that's always been at the core of the conversation with these players, with this core 4 philosophy, and with these negotiations. Is it about regular season performance, or is it about a killer, dogged mentality of playoff success? And it's been the former in terms of the past and the way these players have represented themselves. At some point, I'd like to see it turn. I'm sure the Leafs would prefer that to be the case, but I'm not sure what happens tomorrow night is going to have any impact in terms of how the contract negotiations roll out with Marner and the Leafs. And again, we'll see what happens come the spring.
Okay, well, what impact could this have personally on Auston Matthews if the Americans do beat the Canadians again and they take the Four Nations? And Matthews gets called to center ice for first to accept and hoist the trophy first. What do you think that does for the Leafs captain, his overall ability, understanding what it means and what it takes to win?
I think it depends on how he plays. I certainly don't think there's a downside. I mean, let me begin there, Gino. There's no downside to winning. It would be a huge benefit to Auston Matthews. It would be a really cool, great experience. It's a short-term tournament. Again, it's the Four Nations face-off. It's not the Olympic Games. It's not the Canada Cups of the past. But there's a lot of eyes on this tournament. And the game tomorrow night on Thursday is going to be a huge ratings bonanza, and people are going to be buzzing about it for a long time. So what we have declared here is this game is going to have an impact on legacies. That's what's on the line. We're not going to forget about this game. We're not going to forget about the outcome of this game. So I think it'll be big for Auston Matthews, but I think ultimately it comes down to how he performs. how he plays. Is he going to be a big game player? Is he going to show up? Is he going to score a goal? That's what he does better than anyone else. If he does all that and they win, it will be a big boost, but it'll put a spotlight on him, Gino, in Toronto. You better do that come the spring, right? If you play great tomorrow night wearing the American colors, come Game 7, if you get to another one in the spring wearing Maple Leaf colors, you better do the same thing.
Oh, the expectations, Hazer. Something to consider about Matthews. He hasn't scored in 8 games dating back to the Leafs NHL schedule. That's the second longest scoring drought since joining the NHL back in 2016.